The Indiana Fever have the most valuable commodity in women's basketball right now. Caitlin Clark finished the 2025 season averaging 19.4 points per game and led the entire 1B in assists, while building a new offense, managing a roster that was never optimally designed around her strengths, and recovering from a groin strain that should have sidelined her for weeks. This is not a collection of vague complaints or cold streak takes. The patterns we are about to profile have been consistent across months of gameplay. The numbers are moving in the wrong direction, and the stylistic conflicts at the center of this problem cannot be coached away through a halftime adjustment. We are going to name each player, rank them from least damaging to most destructive, and by the time we get to the top of this list, you will understand exactly why the gap between Indiana's potential and its actual performance is not a mystery. It is a personnel problem with a documented paper trail. If this is the kind of investigative breakdown your timeline has been missing, the actual systemic analysis beneath the box scores, hit that like button. It takes 1 second and it tells the algorithm this research. Backed coverage deserves a wider audience. Starting at number 5, the Sydney Carlson situation was never supposed to generate controversy. When Indiana signed her on February 5th of 2025, the organizational logic was defensible. Bring in a veteran who understands competitive environments. Give the younger players someone to calibrate against. Add locker room stability to a franchise navigating the most intense public scrutiny in the league's history. She was not expected to be a star. She was expected to be a star. She was expected to be reliable. In 28 games, Carlson has averaged 2.5 points, under 1 rebound per game, and 2 assists, all while logging fewer than 11. Those numbers would be concerning for a developmental player still learning the system. For a 35-year-old veteran consuming a guaranteed roster spot, they represent a resource allocation failure that the front office cannot continue to rationalize. The developmental cost alone is significant. Every minute Carlson logs is a minute that a player like Mikayla Timpson does not. Timpson is already hitting double figures and attacking the glass like someone fighting for every second of court time, because she is. Clark's offense is precision machinery. The entire system is built around rapid ball movement, quick reads before defenses can rotate, and the ability to punish defensive commitments in the fraction of a second they appear. Every time the ball enters Carlson's hands, that precision erodes. At 35, her lateral quickness no longer matches the pace requirements of a 2026 one-day offense. Defenders gain an extra beat to recover. The open look that should exist in a half-second window has already closed by the time Carlson delivers the pass. Those half-second margins are not insignificant details. They are the entire difference between a fluid, high-efficiency offense and a stagnant possession that ends in a contested pull-up. Indiana is losing that. Number 4 is Brianna Turner, and this is the most painful name on the list. Not because she is disruptive in the way others are, but because the foundation of her game once genuinely suggested she could be what Indiana desperately needs inside. A first-round pick who built real credibility through defensive aggression, shot-blocking instincts, and the interior toughness that separates competitive rosters from championship-caliber ones, Turner was drafted into a profile that overlapped almost perfectly with Clark's ideal supporting cast. That player has not shown up this season. In 14 games, Turner has averaged 0.4 points, 0.9 rebounds, and 0.2 assists on 20% shooting from the field. She has not accumulated 60 total minutes on the floor for the entire year. Those are not the numbers of a player in a temporary slump. They describe a player who has largely disengaged from the competitive demands this moment requires. The specific absence is measurable when you map it against what Clark actually needs inside. When she drives through the paint and the defense collapses, she needs a receiver at the rim who can catch and finish in one motion without hesitation. She needs screen setting that generates genuine separation rather than incidental contact. She needs an offensive rebounder who attacks the glass proactively rather than drifting toward the three-point line when the shot goes up. Turner at functional capacity could have addressed all 3 of those needs simultaneously. Instead, Indiana is running its offense with a significant interior gap on every possession, and Clark is absorbing compensatory offensive burden that no point guard in this league should be carrying alone. Number 3 is where this conversation demands genuine nuance, because Kelsey Mitchell is a legitimate basketball player, and collapsing that nuance into simple criticism misses the actual issue. She averaged over 18 points per game the previous season. She is producing 16.6 per game right now. She was Indiana's most important offensive player before Clark arrived, and that standing was earned through years of sustained high-level production. There is real skill here, and it would be dishonest to pretend otherwise. The issue is not skill. The issue is fit, and at the championship level, fit matters as much as individual talent, sometimes more. Clark's offensive system operates on a single organizing principle. The ball flows through her hands, defenses commit to stopping her, and every other player on the floor exists to punish those defensive commitments with immediate, decisive action. Catch and shoot. Cut and finish, roll and receive. The offense runs on pace and decisiveness. The relentless exploitation of the fraction of a second advantages Clark creates through her gravity. Mitchell is a ball handler by instinct, not a catch-and-shoot player by nature. She creates for herself. When the ball reaches her in the flow of Clark's system, the offense resets instead of attacking. Spacing compresses, defenses recover. Possessions that should become easy baskets become contested isolation attempts. Drop a comment below right now. Is this style conflict something Indiana can solve through role adjustment and coaching clarity, or has the architectural mismatch become too entrenched to fix at this stage of the season? The WNBA community is loudly split on this exact question, and we want your read on it. The contract dimension makes this conversation even more consequential. Mitchell is approaching unrestricted free agency, and credible reports suggest she is seeking maximum salary consideration. An ambition that is entirely reasonable given her production history, but creates a direct conflict with Indiana's roster, building priority. Right now, the alignment is not there, and the clock on this offseason decision is already running. That brings us to the top two, and these are the names that should be keeping Indiana's front office awake at night. The gap between that mandate and the actual output represents one of the most significant unfulfilled roster investments the Fever have made in this era. The core failure is timing, and timing in Clark's system is not optional. It is the entire mechanism. When Clark drives and the defense collapses, there is a precise fraction of a second window where a kick-out pass becomes an open look. When she calls the pick and roll, there is a specific moment in the defender's recovery where a roll to the basket converts into a layup. Dantas hesitates at both windows. The moment of indecision is brief, but brief is catastrophic inside a system this pace-dependent. The defense recovers. The advantage that Clark spent 3 dribbles construct. The possession ends in a contested mid-range attempt instead of the high-percentage finish the play was designed to generate. On the defensive end, the problems compound. Modern WNBA basketball demands forwards who can switch onto guards, contest three-pointers without fouling, and close out hard on kick-out shooters without arriving late. These are not optional skills. They are the baseline requirements of a league that has fully embraced pace and spacing. Dantas struggles with all three consistently. Her transition defense is slow. Her close-out timing is off. Opponents have identified this vulnerability and are running plays directly at her, which means Clark is spending defensive energy compensating for a teammate's positioning deficiencies rather than focusing entirely on her own matchup responsibility. Real quick, if the depth of roster analysis we bring to Indiana's situation is what keeps you coming back to this channel, consider hitting that join button below. Every member directly supports the research and coverage that lets us go this far beneath the surface on stories the mainstream coverage is glossing over. And now we arrive at number 1 on this list. Natasha Howard, former All-Star. That version of Natasha Howard would have been genuinely transformational for this franchise. The version present in 2026 has told a fundamentally different story. The surface numbers read 11.66 points, 6.8 rebounds, 1.4 assists per game with a 41% field goal percentage. Those stats appear functional until you examine the context. A forward operating primarily inside the arc, in positions where efficiency should be naturally elevated, converting at 41% means missed bunnies at the basket, short shots catching iron, and pull-up attempts outside her reliable range. These are not difficult, contested misses. These are open looks the offense specifically engineered to be simple, and Howard is failing to convert them at the rate her salary and roster priority demand. The defensive decline carries equal weight. 3 years ago, Howard was a legitimate defensive anchor, capable of guarding multiple positions, holding her ground on guard switches, and contesting shots with the timing that comes from elite athleticism and studied positioning. That version was an asset. The current version has become a target. Opposing guards are attacking her on the first step, forcing her into recovery situations her lateral movement no longer handles cleanly. Rotations arrive late, close-outs are compromised. Indiana's half-court defense has structural vulnerabilities that trace directly back to Howard's diminished athletic capacity, and Clark is covering those vulnerabilities at a cost to her own energy reserves that accumulates across a long season. But here is the layer that most coverage is completely missing on Howard, and this distinction matters more than any stat line. The behavioral signals, hunched posture after missed shots, minimal engagement during high-emotion team moments, reduced communication during defensive rotations when verbal coordination is the difference between a stop and a breakdown. Pair that visual record to Clark, who consistently praises teammates publicly, who communicates urgency across every game situation, regardless of her own physical discomfort, who leads through competitive energy even while managing injury. When the standards of effort and accountability are this visibly misaligned between a franchise player and a highest-paid veteran, the effect spreads. Younger players calibrate their own competitive thermostat based on what they observe from the players with the most institutional authority in the locker room. The cultural tax Howard's disengagement imposes on this team is real, and it does not appear in any box score. Howard was Indiana's highest-paid veteran investment, paired with Clark and Boston to form a core capable of serious postseason runs. Instead, she occupies minutes that could be developing the next generation of system-fit contributors. Players with the athleticism, hunger, and role clarity to actually execute within what Clark is building. The opportunity cost compounds daily. If you know a Fever fan who has been frustrated all season but cannot articulate exactly why the team never quite becomes what it is supposed to be, share this video with them right now. Lexi Hull is operating exactly as Clark's system demands, defending with intent, moving without the ball, contributing without requiring possessions to justify her presence. Sophie Cunningham brings a physical edge and competitive intensity that creates actual protection around Clark on the floor. Her ejection against Connecticut on March 15th was not a liability. It was a statement that resonated across the league. Clark does not operate alone in this environment. Michaela Timpson, still raw and still developing, is running the floor and fighting for every rebound like someone who genuinely understands that opportunities at this level are finite. Ari McDonald showed she could initiate offense during Clark's absence, and the question of whether she can execute with discipline in a defined secondary role is one of the genuinely interesting organizational stories of this season. These players embody a specific organizational philosophy, athleticism, versatility, competitive urgency, and the willingness to subordinate individual production to system outcomes. That philosophy is compatible with what Clark needs. The 5 players at the top of this list are not. Indiana possesses the raw materials of a genuine contender. The organizational will to assemble those materials correctly is the remaining variable, which leads directly to the accountability question that the front office. Every underperforming veteran on this list is here because someone in Indiana's decision-making structure prioritized past reputation over current system fit. Howard's contract, Carlson's guaranteed minutes, Dantas's continued roster priority over more energetic alternatives. These are organizational choices, not individual failures in isolation. If the evaluation framework that produced those decisions does not change, if Indiana keeps extending veteran goodwill over the hard assessment of what Clark's system specifically requires, the consequences extend beyond missed championship. The worst-case scenario is Clark surveying her roster situation at the end of this contract cycle, examining the opportunity cost of loyalty to an organization that has not consistently reciprocated it, and making a calculated decision that her prime years belong somewhere that has demonstrated the commitment to build around her properly. The WNBA's expansion landscape is moving fast. New franchises are entering the market with significant financial resources and explicit championship mandates. Clark will have options. Indiana's window to demonstrate it deserves to remain her franchise is measured in seasons, not years, and that clock is running right now. If you are not subscribed yet, this is the moment. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because what comes next is going to be consequential. Our next video breaks down exactly who Indiana should target this offseason to finally build the roster this franchise's talent deserves, the specific player profiles, the contract architecture, and the moves that could convert this team from a compelling marketing story into an actual championship contender. That breakdown is coming very soon. Indiana's ceiling is Caitlin Clark's ceiling, and her ceiling, as a player, as a competitor, as someone who single-handedly expanded the WNBA's audience through pure talent and force of will, is extraordinary. The only question that remains is whether the people making organizational decisions around her are building something worthy of it. Because the championship window is not a future consideration, it is happening right now, and every day it spends underutilized is a day that cannot be reclaimed.